How's it going, everybody? In this video, I wanted to talk about situations where you've been given a project that has a deadline that needs to be deployed, and you have no clue how to do it. Well, this actually comes from my personal experience as an engineer. I went to work for a Cisco partner in the Milwaukee area. I had just come back from vacation, and my boss calls me into his office. At first, I thought I was in trouble, but he's a nice guy, so I wasn't in trouble. He's like, "Hey, have you ever worked with AnyConnect, like the VPN client?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "No, I haven't." He's like, "Ever worked with SSL VPN?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Okay. Have you ever? You've obviously done site-to-site VPN, and you've obviously done DMVPN." Like, "Yes, I've done those." Okay. "Well, so you understand cryptography?" "Yes, I do." "Okay. Well, perfect. I need you to go deploy AnyConnect VPN to this customer." Like, oh. And at the point, I had never done it before. I didn't even know how to set it up. Like, I knew what it was vaguely, but I didn't know how to deploy it. And so he was cool. He took the time. Now, mind you, he's a multi-time CCIE, so for him it was a piece of cake just to whiteboard something out. But it was like a half an hour breakdown. Do this, certificate there, da-da-da-da-da, problem solved, boom, done, go. I was like, okay. So then I was left to my own devices. What do I do now? How do I approach this project, execute it effectively, and not break anything in the process? Because remember, this, my friends, is a brownfield deployment. I'm taking what they've already got working, and I have to make it better by adding in AnyConnect. So what's the first thing that I go do? I go look up training for it. Now, for me, at the time, I had an INE subscription. So what did I go do? I immediately went to their AnyConnect VPN videos, and I started watching all of them. It started going through wave after wave after wave of videos. And now I'm spending all of my spare time. So at work, I'm spending probably 20 to 25% of my week, if not more, because this project requires me to get this working. I spun up a lab in order to get it operational and test it out and make sure I could get everything working the way that it was needed to. I had to learn this technology very, very quickly in order to get it working. So I watched the videos, I took lots of notes, then I went through the videos again and I labbed them up as the instructor was going through them, and eventually I got to the point where I can do AnyConnect off the top of my head, right? But I was over and over and over and over again. By doing all of that, I felt way more confident when it came time to actually deploy the VPN solution than I had before. But I was watching videos and learning how the technology worked, reading documentation, getting up to speed as to how this stuff worked. But at the same point in time, I was like, well, I'd really like to finish up my CCIE and service provider. That would be really cool to do. I just didn't have time. So I ended up having to switch from service provider, which I had just sunk about a year into. I had to switch gears and go over to security. So I spent probably the next 6 months diving deep into security, because everything that I did for that job was pretty much security. Whether it was AnyConnect VPN, whether it was using ICE for doing 802.1x network layer authentication, whether it was doing ASA firewalls, whether it was firepower, whether it was Stealth Watch, I did a ton of stuff with security. So I spent the next, like I said, 6 months going through all these technologies and learning how they worked. And I became more and more comfortable with the technologies, but at the end of the day, I still had to go through and learn them and understand what was going on. And eventually, the deployment went well. I had to deploy. The initial rollout was 5 ASAs. I got all 5 done in just a couple of months, but it was. Don't misunderstand me. It took me 5. It didn't take me 2 months to deploy 5 VPN connections. It took me about a week to deploy 5 AnyConnect deployments on 5 ASAs, only because the fact that I spent the previous 3 or 4 weeks learning how everything worked and testing everything out and demoing the stuff after hours, making sure things would work the way that they were supposed to. And then when I was all said and done, the AnyConnect deployment worked the way it was expected to. I was doing the testing phase and making sure everything worked the way that it needed to be and things like that. So it wasn't terribly difficult to go do. It just needed to be done, right? And that in and of itself can be tricky. So when it comes down to situations like that, you need to take those things into consideration. Spend the time to learn the technology. Now, if your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need this done next week, and you've never ever done it before, be like, I'm not going to be able to do it in a week. That's just not feasible. Now, if you're already comfortable with the technology, should be no problem. But no manager should bring a deployment to your doorstep if you've never ever done it before and expect it done in a week. That's just an unrealistic expectation. And you need to go maintain your other project workflows at the same time. That's just not going to happen, right? You're just not going to have the bandwidth in a 40-hour work week. And I say 40 hours because if you're working more than that and now you're making less money than you were set up for. I don't care if you're making $100,000 a year or more. If your 40-hour work week, if you're spending 60, 70, 80 hours a week, there's no balance in that. You're working, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day through the week, and then on the weekends, that's not good. That's not good for your mental health, right? So if most projects are going to take longer, and I've never worked in a scenario where I have a stake in the ground or a thumbtack on a date on a calendar that says this project must be deployed by X. I personally have never had that. You might. And a situation like that comes up, it should not be the following Friday. Simple as that. You should be able to get that done in a month is more of a reasonable time frame. If you get a situation where they're going faster than that, you might be like, you know what, I'm not going to be able to meet that deadline. And you need to be honest with your manager. There are situations where things can get postponed, and or they need to bring in another resource to do that. I've never personally been in a situation where I've had the proverbial gun put to my head where this has got to get done. I have been in situations where I needed to learn something in order to get something done, like the AnyConnect solution that I talked about. But at the end of the day, you need to be open and honest with your manager. And if your manager's good at doing their job, and you go say, hey, Mike, I'm not going to be able to get this done in X amount of time. I just need more time to go learn it or get better at it or whatever the case might be, if that's your situation. But if your boss came to you and said, hey, I need you to deploy DMVPN, or a lot of times your boss isn't going to tell you specifically what needs to be deployed because that's not really their job. A lot of times there's going to be an engineer that's in charge of the deployment. And if it's in a larger organization, there's probably somebody you can reach out to or talk to or work with in order to do that, or documentation or something that you're going to be able to leverage in order to get that done. But at the end of the day, you still have to learn and you still have to try to get the job done. Simple as that. So do whatever you need to in order to do that. My luck was I had a manager that was cool with it, and he said, there's no real deadline on this. It's whenever it gets done. But we need to get it done sooner than later. I said, okay. So I just put all my time and effort into that project, and I was able to get it done relatively quickly in his eyes. From going from 0 to hero in the deployment, that's how we went ahead and did it. And he was happy with the deployment. He used it on a regular basis, and what was cool about him, and I'm the same way. So for example, after it was deployed, he'd be like, yeah, one of my guys, his name is Rob, he deployed all this, he did a great job. I'm the same way. It's like if one of the people that I work with, like, yeah, I worked with Mike the other day on this because I just didn't have time to deal with it, or I passed the buck to him and he took care, he did an awesome job getting this working. You're going to give kudos to people so that they know it's a team effort. It's like anytime I can, boost somebody's reputation or make them look good or give them credit where credit is due, I do that because fortunately for me, that's how people have treated me. So that's pretty much it. You want to have a conversation with your manager. You don't want to just act like don't go in there and don't say a word and get teed off at the situation. You want to handle it as professionally as you can and go that route. Have a conversation. Be like, I don't know this. I need time to go learn it. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'll have to go hand this off to so and so. And if you know that other person's busy, be like, I'll do what I can. Maybe I just need to sit down with this person for a little bit and get the handoff. And that's actually what ended up happening to me. I took that project from some other engineer. I went up to my buddy. I'll call him Tim, even though his name is not Tim. I went up to Tim. I said, hey, Tim, Mike wants me to take over this AnyConnect project from you. And told me that I should come talk to you about it. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And he goes, pull up a chair. Let's have a conversation. So I sat down and he laid out to me what was going to happen and stuff like that. So he did a really good job handing off, right? And I'm the same. I've learned a lot from those soft skills. It's not all It's not all about having a CCIE or being super technical. It's about being able to talk to somebody and having an open conversation. Be like, Mike goes to Rob and says, hey, I want you to go talk to Tim and go get that AnyConnect project from him because he's got too much going on. I need you to deal with that. And I think it would be a great learning experience for you. And you go to talk to Tim, and Tim goes, oh, yeah, I already talked to Mike. He told me what's going to happen. And they lay it out for you. And be like, hey, if I run into problems, can I ping you for assistance? And if in this case here, Tim was a really nice guy, and Tim said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'd be happy to help you. And because at the end of the day, if I'm running into problems and I need someone to reach out to, and I can reach out to Tim, and Tim goes, sure, no problem, that makes me feel better because then I don't feel like I'm on an island by myself. And that's a really big thing, is to not be on an island by yourself. So that's it. Have an open conversation with whoever your manager is. Let them know your weaknesses. Let them know your strengths. And if they're trying to build your strength or build your weaknesses into strengths, make sure that they're not asking you to do more than what you're capable of doing. But definitely be willing to learn and to try to level up, because if you're not willing to step up to the plate and try to take a couple of swings at the ball that's coming at you, that's my baseball reference for you, then maybe you're in the wrong line of work. But definitely be open to the idea and do everything you can in order to get the job done. That's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.